This is Chapter 1, Section 4 notes. So we're going to start out with some vocabulary. Equivalent expressions are two expressions that have the exact same value. So something like 2 plus 3 should be the same as or equal to 3 plus 2. And 1 times 4 should be equal to 4 times 1. So they're different on either side, but they still equal the same number. Deductive reasoning is using facts to logically determine a conclusion. So for example, all freshmen must take a math class. Fact, you are a freshman. So your conclusion using deductive reasoning would be that you must take a math class. Okay, so that's using logic to determine a conclusion. A counterexample is an example showing that the statement is not true. For example, everyone in class is a student. This would not be true. Your counterexample would be that Mrs. Birdsall is not a student. She's a teacher. Okay. So next, we have this giant list of properties. So these are mathematical properties. You might have seen some of these before. So commutative property changes the order of the factors. It doesn't change the product. So for addition, you'd have something like we had up here in the example. 18 plus 54 is the same as 54 plus 18. Multiplication, 12 times 3 equals 3 times 2. So commutative property changes the order. So that's the important part here. Okay. Associative property changes the grouping, so changes the parentheses. So for addition, you could have 23 plus 9 in parentheses and then plus 4. That's the same thing as having 23 on the outside plus 9 plus 4. Okay, so you just change where the parentheses are or the grouping. Multiplication, same type of thing. In parentheses, you could have 7 times 9 and then times 10 on the outside. And then on this side, you'd have 7 times on the outside and then 9 times 10. The numbers all stay the same, but the parentheses change. Next up, we have the identity properties. The identity properties means the sum of any real number and 0 is the original number, and the product or the multiplication of any real number and 1 is the original number. So you're not actually changing anything by adding 0. So 1/2 plus 0 still gives you 1/2. That's the identity. Okay, you start with a number and you end with that same number because you added 0. For multiplication, the number for the identity is not 0, it's 1. So 67 times 1 is 67. So the 67 stays the same when you multiply by 1. Okay, so those are identity properties. Your starting number stays the same because you added by 0 or you multiplied by 1. What happens when you multiply by 1? Well, then you have the 0 property of multiplication. So any product of a number and 0 is always 0. So 18 times 0 equals 0. 2 times 0 equals 0. Any number times 0 will equal 0. Okay, that's the 0 property of multiplication. And the last property is the multiplication property of -1. So when you multiply -1 by a number, you get the opposite. So -1 times 9 equals -9. You could do this in reverse. -1 times -3 will give you +3. So it just makes it that number the opposite. If it started out negative, it becomes positive. If it starts out positive, it becomes negative. And that's the multiplication property of -1. So the first couple of problems, you're just stating which property is illustrated. So 42 times 0 equals 0. Well, that is going to be the multiplication property of 0, or 0 property of multiplication. Number 2, I start out in parentheses, y plus 2 plus 15 equals y plus, and then parentheses 2 plus 15. The only thing that changed here where my parentheses were, so this will be the associative property of addition. The of addition part is important because you're adding, you're not multiplying. So you want to make sure that that's detailed out. And number 3 is 5x times 3 equals 3 times 5x. The order changed, so that's going to be the commutative property of multiplication. So all you're doing is matching the statements up with the different properties. So then we switch gears a little bit, and we're going to go into some mental math. So it says a movie ticket costs $7.75, a drink costs $2.40, popcorn costs $1.25. What is the total cost of the ticket for a drink, popcorn, and a ticket? So use mental math, no calculator. So this goes back to your old school type of math. So I'm going to line them up. So $7.75, that was for the ticket, plus a drink, which was $2.40. 5 plus 0 is 5. 7 plus 4 is 11. Carry the 1. 1 plus 7 plus 2 is 10. So I have $10.15 so far. And then I take that $10.15 and add the popcorn cost, which is $1.25. 5 plus 5 is 10. Carry the 1. 1 plus 1 plus 2 is 4. 0 plus 1 is 1. And drop the 1 down is 11. So it should cost you $11.40 for a movie ticket, a drink, and popcorn. Not bad. So next we're going to be simplifying expressions. So this first one, I have 5 on the outside, then 3n. I just distribute that in. You guys have done this before. So 5 times 3 is 15n. This next one has some parentheses. So 4 plus 7n plus 8. Now the parentheses are around the 4 and the 7n. Those are not like terms, but because of the associative property from up above, I can actually change the parentheses. So I can put the parentheses around the 4 and the 8 and put the 7n on the outside. Now I have like terms in my parentheses that I can add together. So 4 plus 8 is going to be 12. So 12 plus 7n should be my final answer. And this next one starts out with 6xy over y. Now, something cool about a fraction or a division written as a fraction like this is if you have something identical on the top and on the bottom, they actually will cross each other out. So I can cross out the y's. And so that just gives me, well, what's left? 6x over 1, and anything divided by 1 is just itself, so just 6x would be my final answer. If you had kept it as 6x over 1, that would have been fine as well. So now we're going to use counterexamples and deductive reasoning. So is the statement true or false? If it is false, give a counterexample. So here I have, for all real numbers a and b, a times b equals b plus a. So I just chose 2 random numbers. I'm going to put 5 in for a and 6 in for b. You can choose any 2 numbers as long as they're not the same. So when I plug this in, I have 5 times 6. Does that equal 6 plus 5? Well, 30 does not equal 11, so I'm going to say that that's going to be false. And this is my counterexample. Pretty easy. So again, for the next one, this time I chose 3, 4, and 5. So 3 is A, 4 is B, and 5 is C. And so I plugged it in. So 3 plus 4 plus 5, does that equal 4 plus 3 plus 5? So I did parentheses first. So 7 plus 5, does that equal 4 plus 8? So 12 equals 12, so that's going to be true.